What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of First Blood, the last one of the week. The matches have been so full of energy and absolute bangers. I'm here with my co-host, Hold Shift. How you doing, man?
Bro, I'm not even gonna lie to the people. It's like, I am just fogged today. I don't know what it was. I felt great last night, woke up today, and it was just like I was driving home. And you ever have those moments like where you're just like you feel like you like just completely blacked out, like you don't remember what you did like 30 seconds ago?
Mm-hmm.
That was me the entire drive home. I was like, how am I here already? Like I'm in a fog today, man. It's bad. I got some coffee. I'm going to try to figure it out. I'm going to try to hit regain button real hard.
Well, that makes two of us, Alan. It's all good. We're going to push through today. Chat, we're getting our caffeine in. You know, we're getting the vibes flowing, but we're going to be talking about some of the crazy matchups yesterday. A lot of teams who kind of handle business and all craziness on that side of things. We'll do a small little recap on that, and then we'll kind of talk about I don't know, potential changes for some of these teams and get into the matches today. So just getting right into it. We will kind of just backpedal to the first match of the day yesterday. Just going in and talking about Atlanta FaZe versus London. And to be honest, this one went pretty much as expected, kind of what we were talking about yesterday from my end of things. I know you had London taking it in this one,
I
but
did, yeah.
Throughout the entirety of the series, I think that Atlanta just looked really good, to be honest. I think they look like a well-oiled machine, and I know we kind of broke down a few things on that Gavutu control that I know we spoke about yesterday, but overall, they looked really good, man. They look solid across all modes. The only thing that we would talk about is that Gavutu control, which we kind of spoke about on the podcast yesterday. It was just like London seemed like they know what they're doing. They got that map down to a T, and they continue to do things that, I don't know, maybe teams should take, honestly, from their playbook, because they seem like the one team that can just get B point or defend B point. Like, it doesn't matter. They just handle business every single time.
Yeah, these guys are clean, man. And the thing about it is that we kind of expected it when we were framing up this series yesterday. We're talking, okay, expect to see the same maps that what they played versus each other in the major. And that was the case for the hard points. I'm mostly curious because I don't know if you caught it, but like the end of the fourth map, Zero was getting at the squad about some of the small little mistakes they kind of made at the end there to not quite be able to put away that Tuscan hard point. The thing that really kind of, I think we need to really start appreciating about this Atlanta team as we watch them more is how good they are at being able to contest, if not break, the most difficult hard points in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 different radar station P4s on Gavutu. They were able to get up top on the jump cliff and then contest every single time against a London team that had a really solid setup, bro. Like, these guys are unbelievable at playing through the hardest hard points point-wise in the game. And that's why I think they win both of those maps, by the way, because they didn't just do it on the P4 at Gavutu. They also did a really good job of breaking London setups on rotation to Fountain on Tuscan and P3. They were really, really clean. And their search and destroy looked perfect on Bakash. So, man, I'm telling you, I was a little bit in doubt, not just because of some of the kind of mismatched results that we saw from Atlanta versus Seattle, but also just how clean London have been lately. So it was a good series. It's one that I think a lot of people are going to walk away thinking, yep, Atlanta, clean, probably the best team in the game, maybe arguably, you know, Optic fans out there have something to say. But I think what we saw right then for Atlanta yesterday goes to show that this team is 100% still at the top. And there's nothing to take away from London either, by the way. I have them right there neck and neck. That was a very close series.
Yeah, no, I think too, I want to give a big shout out to RCs. I loved how they started out that Gavutu
crazy
hard point. He was just absolutely frying, doing his thing. Ooh, we're getting some backfeed from your microphone.
Who, me?
Yeah, I think it's good now. I don't know. I was hearing things twice. Anyways, I think I just wanted to give a big shout out to RCs. He was absolutely frying through that entirety of the map 1, and I loved how he kind of set the momentum for his team going into that series. I just think it's super important from like the veteran on the team, kind of the guy who gets flack some of the times whenever the FaZe team isn't performing, but he stepped up big time, kind of setting the tempo for the series. And continued to do his thing. And I think on the side of London, like, you're not really too worried about it. I spoke about it yesterday a little bit, that they are kind of under practice. They just got Gizmo back into the mix. For me personally, kind of knowing all the insider info, like, I'm not worried about them at all. I think as they get more practice under their belt with Gizmo, getting him back into the States, obviously, and they're going to continue to scrim, continue to get better. And, you know, they played a tight series versus FaZe, but FaZe took them down. I think it's a good thing if you're a FaZe fan, though. They look fluid, they look sound, and I'm excited to see what they can continue to do in the rest of the week and their schedule.
I'll say this, just we'll talk about it more when we frame up the series, but like definitely keep an eye later on today against Toronto, how Atlanta are able to contest and neutralize some of the more key hard points no matter what map we play. They're really, really good at dissecting those difficult hills from the front on break attempts and really punishing teams. As much as London is obviously kind of historically now kind of gone through this year as the #1 break team in hardpoint, even if Atlanta's not necessarily getting full breaks and full wins when they're trying to break hard points, it's what they're doing to make life difficult on the more comfortable hills. They're one of the best teams in the game at doing it. So definitely keep your eye on that.
Yeah, no, I'm honestly surprised that they continue to do it. Like, I know the stat was out there, and like for me, sometimes you see stats like early on in the season and they can kind of change over time, but London continue to do it time in and time out. So it's really good to see out of those guys that they kind of make it easy. You obviously see that their teamwork's flowing and they have the capability to kind of get in there, pop some crazy two pieces and open up the map for them. But that's kind of all. Like, this series honestly wasn't too like in depth really. I feel like FaZe just kind of handled business across the board on the maps that they won. And like I said, they kind of stole the Gavutu control. We could have possibly seen a map 5, but FaZe ended up handling business and closing out that series. But that's kind of my final thoughts on that. Like I said, I think London will be fine with some more practice under their belt once they get Gizmo back into the mix and stuff with some more scrims and whatnot. And then that FaZe looks good. So that'll kind of transition us into the second match of the day yesterday. It's going to be it was a long day yesterday, man. It was a banger. But I want to talk about this match honestly a little bit. But it was good to see, I guess, New York. Well, the match was New York Subliners versus Paris. It was good to see New York finally get on the board. They won both hard points, I think, in the series. Was what it was, and they looked good, man. They looked happy. It was cool to see, but I want to see kind of where your thought process is, I guess, on this. I know everyone was happy to see them win, and like they got Paul in the mix. They did look better, but the thing for me is like I'm not sold on them yet. I just think that they're playing a broken Paris Legion team that at this point has to just be so frustrated. Like I was sitting there looking at Paris's stats, and let me pull it up because I think Paris has won like one, maybe 2 series the entirety of the year so far. Is it one? Yeah, they've won 1 series. So yeah, they're 1-10, I think is what it is. So it's like, I don't know. If you're a New York fan, yeah, you're happy. Like they got a different lineup. They got, the new vibes. They got everything going for them. But it's like they beat a team that is just broken, right? Like Paris across the board is 5-17 in a hard point. They're 6-10 in search and destroy and 4-8 in control. It's like, are you really that happy? I know the players aren't satisfied, but I know it's also good to get a win. But I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on both of these teams.
Man, I don't know. We're at a point now, and this is going to be, I think, the 3rd year in a row, where it's just like, what is this Paris team even doing anymore, man?
Mm-hmm.
Like, as an organization, I don't want to even put this on the players. Just as an organization, the first year you come out, you have your team, you put together a roster you think is going to do well. Get it? Cool. You get a chance to get 2 Australian players in the mix. Sweet. The year after, you don't come out with a roster until like the very last minute. They announced their Cold War roster like the beginning of January. Like by and far the last team to announce their roster. And then this year it's kind of the same situation. We don't know if Paris is going to even keep their spot. They're the only team without a team facility. It's just like, what are we doing, man? It's getting to the point where it just can't be acceptable. Like it just can't be. Because you've got a really solid player in Temp, by the way. Like, I feel for him. Like, he has got to be fighting for his life, bro. Not just because he's kind of got to lead this team that who knows what the roster is even going to be next week. Because I hate to say it, I don't think Jimbo's going to be around any longer. It's just he's not cutting it. I don't know, bro. It's I want to use the word embarrassing. Like, that's the first word that comes to mind. You've got a team that doesn't really feel like it seriously takes it, anywhere near the same level as any other team right now in the league, with no facilities, very little organizational support by the look of it. It's not a good look. No. And this New York team, I think, proved that Paul is the answer in some regard, but I wouldn't get too excited about it because this Paris team is just in shambles, man.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the biggest thing for me is like, it seems like what you said, they're just set up for failure, like realistically. Like, they basically bottom feed, pick up their roster last second. Like they're choosing from the scraps of the players, and they went with a veteran roster to start out the year, which I think was fine, but the team composition just didn't make sense for me. I would have liked to see them kind of take a risk on some of these younger guys and newer players and see what they could have done right out the gates. But then now it's like they're making these changes. And like you said, like they put Jimbo in the mix. They're not finding a lot of success. In the last few matches, you've seen Temp and John absolutely frying, like
really
playing really good Call of Duty. Like they should be taking some of these series with how well individually they've been playing, but they're just not finding any success at all, which really sucks to see, because I know when you get to that point, it's just like you question everything as a player, right? Like you're putting in so much time like outside of just practice and your scrims with your team to be the best individual player that you can be. Because at the end of the day, like your stock is on the line. When you're on a losing roster, you're 1-10. Like you still got to show out individually to show what you can bring to the table for years to come and potentially maybe later down the road in the year. And it's like, I can't imagine what these guys are going through. Like Temp and John have now had 2-3 different rosters on this Paris team. And I would not be surprised if you see another roster change here with this team. Like you said, I think they've just been kind of underwhelming. They've lost 2 Game 5s, and then that series yesterday just wasn't even close for arguably the worst team in the league going into that series. So I don't know. The Paris roster, they need to figure it out. I think it sucks, and it's very dumb that they're not playing in a facility. Like even when we were talking with Bance about it, he says he feels so checked out when they're not playing it, and I can speak from experience. When I'm playing in my bedroom and was on these online league matches, I feel like you're just not in that same morale and like team environment, and you don't get into it as much. It's hard to kind of lock in and engage with your teammates. So I don't know. On the side of Paris, they got to figure it out, man. I think Temp and John are playing really good Call of Duty and they should be able to be finding some wins here. I don't think they should be 1-10. They just need to find someone that is comfortable with them. And I think Tom Gravity too, like speaking on him, like people don't really talk about him a lot because he plays like a more like structured AR role, I would say, like kind of like accuracy. And I feel like, I don't know, his stats he's kind of just been like, right? Like he hasn't really done anything, in my opinion. I feel like he's just been like a mid AR. He's just been all right. But I think that just kind of falls on like the team chem and like kind of just the vibe of the whole team right now. It's just all off. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what these guys do, if they'll stick it out with Jimbo and continue to try and work on things, or if they're going to go down the route of just making another roster change, because neither one of it's fun. Like you keep the same roster, you still don't get results. It's like, that's terrible. Or you change the roster and like things just aren't working again. It's just, I don't know. It can't be fun being in that situation.
It's gotta be like, you have to think at some part of this, like if it's really this chalked, at what point do you try to get the coaches and Temp together to try to convince whoever the management system is, like, yo, just let Temp pick a squad, man. Like, let's just get vibey. Let's just, find 4 guys that at least could enjoy each other, because then you at least start seeing some sort of maybe results where they can just enjoy each other, right? Like, it's tough. Like, there is not, and the thing about it is, it's not just that they're losing. There is no consistency in any map mode combination. Like, to come out and beat London on Berlin the other day, hardpoint, look pretty solid, making good choices, and then get put into the 100-point club by New York, who's never won a hard point. Like, how does that happen? There's so, it's I don't know. It feels bad for Paris. I will say on the other side, nice tune-up for New York, right? You get the vibes on. You start to get everything feeling pretty solid with the team, with the new pickup with Paul. You kind of get the chemistry going, and obviously you kind of ride a little bit of a high right there, right? Winning not just 1 but 2 hard points, both of them pretty convincingly. That's good news. And you also dominate the search and destroy. That's even better news, I would say, for a new team. Neptune, by the way, looked great in the search, just for what it's worth. So, I mean, that's all good news for New York, but it's one of those things where it's like, you can only take so much out of a W here, I think, if you're New York, because this Paris team is just, this may be the worst form of the Paris team we've ever seen, which is hard to say. Like, it would be difficult, I think, to compare and contrast, but this Paris team is just, it's hard to watch. I'll say that much. It's hard to watch. Yeah,
I mean, I definitely think it's hard to watch for sure. I mean, just even like I said, from the player perspective, I just can't imagine how it is mentally. The mental battle as a player, like when you're going through something like this, is just so hard. It's so frustrating. Everything you try and do just doesn't work. Doesn't matter what roster change you do. I think, like what you said, they should semi blow it up. Like literally, I think you take Temp John. I don't even know. Like, I don't know what flexibility they have as far as like on the business side of things, like I don't know if Paris is willing to make more changes. We've seen them in the past kind of make them stick it out with certain rosters, and they don't want to really spend too much money. They basically release their players every time they get rid of them. They don't keep them around on the bench. They just get rid of them. So I'm interested to see what they'll do here. I don't know if you go out and just like semi blow it up. Like I said, you get rid of like Jimbo and maybe you take Tom out too, and you just try 2 new guys, maybe put in like a Mohawk and a Johnny or something, do something crazy. Like you might as well, the way I see it is like, you might as well try and pick up 2 guys who have never played in the league, put them on the minimum. You know, Paris pays the minimum, and then just see what they can do. Maybe they can try and bring some spark of energy to this team and bring in like completely new faces. Because for me, when a team gets so far gone like this and they're so chalked, like I don't even think it's been Gravity hasn't looked good. Like I said, he's kind of just been mid. In my opinion, but like I just think it's so chalked, like to the point where you have to make like a 2-player change. You got to bring in new scenery, you got to bring in new vibes and kind of refresh everything, spark some new interest, and at the same time you have nothing to lose. Like you're 1-10 in the league right now. There's nothing that can go worse than what's happening. So I'd be interested to see what they do. Like I said, I don't even know though on the business side of things. And then lastly too, I want to say on New York side of things, I loved Hydra, dude. Hydra's a beast. This guy's insane. Like,
dude,
I was jokingly saying it.
The scope was gross.
I was like, yeah, like we can talk about New York looking better, blah 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 blah. But like this guy Hydra was unreal. Like literally through both the maps they won, he had like 42 something kills in the hardpoint map 1, and then even in the search and destroy, I remember he went on like an 8 spree to go like start up like 8-1. And yeah, him and Neptune were working the map well together. They did look better, but like it was literally the Paco Hydra show. This guy was insane. And then you saw him slow down map 3 and they finally lose a map. It was kind of like, oh, okay, well, he doesn't do it all and they lose. But no, I think New York did look better. I'm interested to see kind of how they will match up against some of these other teams with the vibes flowing now, and kind of you saw smiles across the board from all those guys. So I want to see them play some middle of the pack teams, see what they can do, and see if this roster is the real deal.
This matchup really was something else, man, because both teams desperately needed a W. Like,
well, someone was due. We said it, right? We were like, yo, someone's gonna win this match.
No, we would have been saying this about Paris though too. Like if Paris were to have won this series, like it's just a W that both teams desperately needed. This was like a turning point for both teams where you win it, okay, vibes are starting to get put back together. You feel okay, confidence at least is somewhat there. You lose this matchup though, and it feels like it's just gone. Like it's just everything falls apart at the seams. So I don't know. It's interesting just from a number of different reasons and a number of different lenses and viewpoints. It's just still like there's a long road to go. And for a team like Paris at this point, it's like we had mentioned kind of throughout changes yesterday, like Pro-Am's not until the beginning of May. You've got this long period after stage 2 where it's this mid-season off period. And if you don't get it figured out between now and the start of stage 3, like the year just may be over at that point. Like trying to make changes mid-stage 3 with not a lot of time to play left in the season would be hard pressed, I think, to recover and get to playoff form, right? Like, and maybe we talk about this a little bit because you kind of, if you read the twit longer from Havoc, he also kind of said the same thing about, New York is in the same boat where they only have 10 points. Like turning that around to get into playoff form is difficult to do with just one move. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all with this twit longer from yesterday, but it's really do or die time. And I'll be curious to see what Paris wants to do from here, because it may just be like, well, we're just going to ride it out, see what happens. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, oh well.
Yeah.
Kind of like last year.
I'm definitely interested to see too. And I think the biggest thing for me is like they literally dropped their players, like I said. So like say they do make another change and they get rid of both these guys and it gets even worse, like they're probably just stuck with the roster for the rest of the year, like no matter what. So I don't know. I'm interested to see it. Like I said, and we can definitely hit on the Havoc situation here after we wrap up the day 1 recap. But sure. I think, I don't know. I'm excited to see, like I said, what this New York team can do. Paul's back in the mix. Guy's undefeated in the league so far. Hasn't lost a series. So tippable out of him.
Love Paul, man. Yeah, big Paul X fan.
I am too. I'm glad he's finally in the league and on a team. And like I said, I'm excited to see what New York can do kind of through these next few weeks and through the major with this new roster. Hopefully they can turn it around, get some points on the board and be a competitive team. But that's kind of my final thoughts on both of them. I think Paris, like I said, need to figure out the roster and figure out what they want to do. I can't imagine what the players are going through. And then New York finally gets a win on the board. So congrats to those guys. Then that'll take us into our third match of the day. It was an Optic steamroll, an Optic smoke show. It really wasn't. I don't know. Like Optic literally plays them. I told you yesterday. I was like, I hope I see them just veto bow cage. They go in. They don't care. They square up on it, and they play. Probably Florida's best map, which I understand kind of on the veto side of things, but. I don't know. Optic just continue to look good, and I think this is a conversation we spoke about before. It's like, what team are we going to get from Florida in this series? Are we going to get a team that comes out and they can compete and play against the best, or are they going to fall short? And I think, honestly, Optic just handled business, man.
No, they absolutely did. Although I will say, like, I tweeted it before the series started when we saw the map picks and bans. I was like, this is the best potential map set, I thought, for Florida to potentially upset. Because I know you're not a big fan of the whole playing Optic on Bacage, but I'm actually a fan of Florida picking that map, and I thought they played it very, very well, honestly speaking. Like, outside of Dave really getting gunned up by Dashy, I thought everything else as far as Florida's game plan that we've seen them do in every series that they've played, by the way, except for their first, they still look really good on this map, and they still held Optic really close. Like Scump's little finish at the end there by P2 to get the first kill, and then to be able to get on and contest that last 1.2 seconds. Like, that was a big difference maker because Florida was looking good to possibly rotate over to P3. So that was a heads up play from Scump to kind of make sure they secured the map. Search and Destroy wasn't all that great for Florida. I think that's still the mode that they really need to work the most on. And then the control is the control. Like, you can't go out and expect to beat Optic at control right now. They're really, really good at it. So as much as the 3-0 I think was very convincing for Optic, I still think for Florida, it puts you in a headspace of, we were competitive in all three maps for the large majority of it, maybe outside of the search, like I mentioned. So I think you kind of walk away with your wins versus LAG, your win versus New York, and you're, tested by Optic. I think you feel okay with how you're progressing through this second stage right now. I still think they're probably one of the more difficult teams to predict, but I at least think that there is some confidence to take away for Florida, even though they did get 3-0'd, which is hard to say, and I know it sounds weird, but really the control and the hard point were very well contested, I thought, from Florida at the moment for where they are.
No, I think you're right. I think on the Florida side of things too, like you see Awakening hitting this form. We've kind of seen it before too. Like I want to talk about him. Like he's on point right now, man. He truly understands the game. It kind of reminds me of like watching Temp, where like all the situational plays he gets put in, all the gunfights and one-on-ones, you see him kind of on screen. Like he's winning vast majority of them. He's playing really well individually. They just need to figure it out. And I think, like you said, Dave Patty had a very slow series versus these guys. I know on that Bocage, like he started really bad. I want to see, I can pull up his stats here. Yeah, he ended up going 20 and 33 as the main AR on that map. So it's a rough individual performance from him, but it's no biggie there. I think, like you said, that they got a lot to take away. And on the Optic side of things, dude, I gotta give it to Dashy. That guy is different, bro. I keep saying it right every time. Like I sound like a broken record on this show, and like it's just, you can't not talk about the guy. Like this guy is the only main AR in the league consistently putting up these numbers versus whoever he plays. Like in this series, he went 77 and 53, a 1.45 KD, 2,000 more damage than his teammates, like on all throughout the entirety of the series, going plus 24. Like that's just insane individual play out of him. We talk about kind of the main AR role in this game and how difficult it can be at times, but this guy's literally mastered it. Like I know he has really good teammates around him and players who obviously make his job easier, and I'm sure he'll state that as well. But like the guy is playing on an unbelievable form right now. And if this guy can continue to keep it up, number one, is he in the running for MVP? But number two, this Optic team is going to be so hard to beat. Like this guy hasn't had an off series in so long. Like he's playing unreal, man. He's lights out right now.
Yeah, I just had to check Breaking Point to see where he found himself right now in the overall KD leaderboards. He is literally 0.01 away from being tied with Cellium. So 1.22 for Cell, 1.21 for both Dashy and Awakening, by the way. So kind of piggybacking off of what you had said about how good Awakening has been in this title. So that's great stuff across the board from Optic fans. I mean, it's crazy because like I every time that I think about whenever I watch Dashy pop off, I always for some reason go back into my subconscious and reflect back on that whole situation with Optic Gaming LA, when that whole Modern Warfare shenanigans had been happening, and he came out and like sniped on Piccadilly like just before playoffs or whatever, and just like popped off, and everyone's like, dude, why has Dashy not been playing all year? And like now we're getting this. Yeah, I think he depending on what happens at the end of the year, let's just say it, like if it's an Atlanta Optic final, if these two teams continue to be the top two, whichever team wins, you're either gonna have Cellium as MVP or Dashy's MVP for the year. period. They're both so good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it reminds me too, like I saw Damon's tweet or Karma's tweet yesterday. He tweeted, "I'd always be hesitant last year saying Optic would win something doing the pre-show, but this year they're looking better than any roster they've had in the CDL. Happy for them." And I just completely agree with that. We've spoke about it a little bit. Like these guys continue to look like the real deal. They don't really have a weak mode across the board right now. And the individual performances you're getting from some of these guys is just absolutely nuts. Hopefully they can keep it up. And kind of that was my final thoughts on it. I think Florida, they looked all right, but Optic just continued to dominate and handle business. And it's good to see if you're an Optic fan heading into the major. They're handling business right now in the online league, and excited to see kind of what they can do back on LAN. That's my final thoughts on that match, unless you have anything else. That will kind of transition us into the last match of the day from yesterday. The Boston Breach go up against the Toronto Ultra. And this match, if you guys didn't get to catch this match live, I don't know. This match was insane. It was such a battle back and forth. And like we talked about it a little bit yesterday on the show. Like these guys, you know, they play at the major. It goes all the way the stretch to the map 5, right? We see yesterday probably one of the most insane Bocage hardpoints I've ever seen in my life. Like, there's been some crazy ones. Obviously, at the end, they always come down to like an ending and nail biter 240, 240. But like these guys, I've heard time and time again people say a lead on Bocage is like if a 50-point lead, it's doubled. Everything it's doubled, right? And like these guys make an insane comeback. And the guy who really stepped up for me was Nero, right? Like we talked about it yesterday. I told you I think he's the X factor for this team. He's got to be. After watching yesterday, I think for sure in my eyes he is the streakiest player in the CDL right now out of all 48 players. He is literally an absolute beast, or he's a bust. Like, I don't understand. And he talked about it a little bit in the interview. I was listening to him. He feels like he needs to slow down his game a little bit, and he starts using his tacks, getting free kills. And I love to hear that, because that means that on the coaching side of things and from a player standpoint, like they're having these internal conversations. And I think as a player, it's like realizing my mistakes and like realizing, hey, I need to work on XYZ, right? And like I think for him, he's starting to figure that out. The guy literally was going for capsule numbers on Bocage, trying to break his record. I was DMing Cap back and forth actually after the matches yesterday. He was like, that guy Nero's weird. He was trying to steal my record on the map. I was cracking up laughing. So he had me laughing, but overall, this series was insane, man.
Dude, it's do we almost consider Nero to be like the Brett Favre of the CDL, where he's like throwing for the most touchdowns and the most interceptions? Like he's kind of got like that situation going on. No, man, I'm very high on this Boston team. I thought, you know, watching them play against Minnesota was like the first, like, okay, now we're really getting this Boston team. Now, granted, Minnesota's kind of in shambles. We talked about that yesterday, so on and so forth. But I was mostly looking at all the impressiveness coming out of Boston. And at the beginning of this week, you know, I was looking through all the matches, and I would have picked Toronto at the beginning of this week to win this series. But after watching them play Minnesota, I was like, look, they are growing and improving at an astronomical rate, this Breach team. And look, all you need to know is watching that first map, that's everything. They were down like 80, 90 points. It was like 210 to like 150, and they still came back to win that map. That is the most unbelievable comeback that we've seen so far this year on a map that's very difficult to do that. It's not like Gavudu, where it's just like, oh, you know, we were scrappy throughout P1, P2. We had the rotation for 3, and then we won the rotation to 4. So you put together 120 straight points. There's no such thing of doing that on Bocage until we saw Boston put together like 90 seconds straight between P5 into the next rotation of the first and the second. Unbelievable, dude. This Boston team is so damn good.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think like we've talked about a little bit, and I always mention it's like when you start to see this consistency play out of these rookies, some machine gun players, like this team is the real deal. And I love what they're doing too. Like across all the maps and modes, I say it time and time again, TJ on the AR, I think it makes them play a little bit more fundamental. It slows down the game, and it allows for pop-off potential from Capsule and Nero Poison to kind of open up the map. And like, I just love what I'm seeing. Like the Bocage, they were down a ton. You saw TJ still keep out the AR. They stuck to the game plan, and the time was dwindling down. There was like a minute 30 left on the game clock, and these guys still make a 70, 80, 90 point comeback on probably the hardest map to ever do something like that. So insane composure out of those guys. Like I said, a huge individual performance from Nero yesterday. He stepped up huge for these guys. So big confidence boost for them. I know they're probably feeling on top of the world, right? They've beat these middle of the pack teams. Yesterday we talked about it was kind of like a true test to see what Boston team we were going to get. and to show the resilience through the entire series. And then for them to come out being down 2-1 in the series after losing that controls, kind of that swing mode, and then for them to take that hard point like they did in game 4 in that fashion, it was 250 to 99. Like, these guys handled business. They sent Toronto to the 100-point club, and then I loved what I saw out of them. That Berlin S&D, teams need to take notes on these guys, dude. These guys put on a clinic. And on the Toronto Ultra side, I don't know how many free B drops I'm going to let them give, like, for Boston Breach. Like, these guys literally just go B for free, get the bomb down, and you just see these guys camping depths and spawn through cracked windows and whatnot, like playing clutch. So, I don't know. Great job out of Boston Breach and Saint Composure. And these guys, like I said, they look like the real deal right now.
Absolutely the case. And I still think this Toronto team is very good. I do think that they were getting a little bit too cute with that map 5 Berlin, where they were trying to play a little bit too much, like through mail and stuff like that defensively. I think you just got to ignore that. Watch the cross, get your information, play for the break. Like you mentioned, they were letting B just get taken for free way too often. And then I was honestly a little bit surprised that Toronto allowed Gavudu to stay into the mix, if I'm being completely for the hard point in the first place. Because as much as we haven't seen a lot of Boston on the map, I thought what we saw versus Seattle from Boston was very convincing. Whereas it's like, oh, let's not play these guys there, especially if you're going to let Bacage through, which has been one of their more rehearsed maps. So it was a bit interesting, I think, just on the map selection in the first place from Toronto's perspective. But regardless of that, I think this series was way more dictated by the narrative of how good this Boston team is getting and at what rate too. Because I'm telling you, like, you could sit down and watch that last 3 minutes of that Bocage hardpoint and just see the perfection come to life. That P2 hold was disgusting. One of the best P2 holds that we've ever seen. And a lot of it was because you did, like you mentioned, have TJ continuing to play that AR, even when things weren't necessarily going great for him in the early parts of the map, but also just that, like you had mentioned, like the discipline from both Caps and Nero to zone forward with an SMG, but not get too over aggressive. Perfect. Literally perfect.
Yeah, I think too on the side of Boston, I wanted to mention this too. It's like, these guys are rookies, right? This is their first year in the league, both of them playing. It's like, you love to see a rookie actually learn and progress as the year goes on. Like, you were actually seeing improvements from these guys. Like, I've given Nero a hard time, but this guy's actually showing, like, and he said it in the interview, like I said, like, he is working on his game. He's trying to improve. He's trying to work on the fundamental errors that he's making that it will bring more consistency to his game. So I love it. Like you said, they look like the real deal. They're handling business. And even just to talk about too the vetoes, I think that really comes down to what kind of Zen said in that interview after they won the other day. He literally stated Berlin hardpoint's our best map. So like, I think on the Toronto side of things, it's like they either fell for the trap or they really just didn't want to play them on Berlin. They get that map out of there, and then it falls into the Gavutu. So I think Boston's actually in a really good spot as far as like hard points right now. The only map you really don't see them play too often is Tuscan, but the other three they seem to be really comfortable on. So it seems like they're getting a good map pool under their belt. And then on the side of them too, the Search and Destroy looks good. That Desert Siege was iffy, but I think it's kind of a battle we've seen back and forth with them playing Toronto. So you kind of got to pick the map there, but overall, I'm excited to see what they can kind of do when the tick progression comes in. And then to talk a little bit about Toronto, I'm not really worried about this team at all. Like, I don't think this is a series you go and you're like, oh my God, Toronto, now they're not a top 4 team, blah, 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 blah. Like, don't get it twisted. This series could have easily been a 3-1 Toronto. Like, you don't really see, I don't think we'll see too many 70, 80, 90 point like lead blows in a Bocage hard point like that again. So I think Toronto Ultra, they're sitting there watching the VOD back and they're just biting themselves because there's probably 12 different plays that could have gone down and went differently, and they close out that map one and end up winning the series 3-1. So I'm excited to see what both of these teams can continue to do. Like I said, Boston, they look like the real deal, and I want to see them kind of go up against FaZe and Optic, see what they can bring to the table against some of the better teams in the league.
That's the big tester, right? It's now that you've gotten a bite out of Toronto, you have to now see them. Like, we haven't seen them play Thieves yet. I'm excited to see that series for the first time. We also have not seen them play London yet. So I'm actually particularly excited about those two matches. And then seeing how they go there, obviously, then you kind of anticipate how the affair would go between Texas and Atlanta as well. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped about this Boston team. They still need to be tested, though. I think that's what everyone's going to be talking about. But this was a great step in the right direction. Beating Seattle, beating Toronto, that I think takes you out of the conversation of 8th, 6th.
Yeah.
I think you can definitely say top 6 now. I'm pumped about this team.
I definitely agree. I think they've solidified themselves as like a top 5-6 team in the league right now. And then it'll kind of just be a battle to see what they can do when they play, the top 4 and really get into the nitty gritty and play some of these teams that are really solid and have a good map pool and also can compete and search and destroy with these guys. So overall, they're looking good, man. They're looking real good. That's kind of my final thoughts about both these teams. Like I said, not worried about Toronto at all. And I think Boston Breach have continued to impress. So.
Yep.
That will transition us, guys. That's kind of the day 2 recap from yesterday. That'll kind of transition us into our matches today. We actually got some absolute bangers, to be honest with you guys. These are gonna be weird, man.
Do you want to talk Havoc at all? I mean, we
talked yeah. My bad.
But with his quit longer, do you want to bring that up? I thought so. I don't know what your opinion on this is. Maybe I'm going too far off the reservation, but the things that we were talking yesterday about how, you know, the general consensus and just the easy thing to say was like Havoc was demanding certain things to happen. I just have to go out there on a platform and say, and you know, I'm a big Colt fan. He's a really solid guy, but outside of that, it could be about anybody. Do not just take what one person says as this is 1,000,000% what's happening, because it's very easy to take one thing and say it differently and like throw a spin saying, you know, maybe Havoc was just having a conversation, but you use the word demand, and that now starts to kind of bring a negative connotation into the mix. I think that we always have to wait to hear both sides and always be able to think about it outside of what someone is telling you, because the whole situation with what we're getting now after the twit longer, if you missed it from yesterday, there was a pretty fluid conversation. There was no bad blood between him and Crim, even though that seemed to be insinuated in certain regards. And on top of that, if there was the breach of, hey, they want to make a 2-man change, of course Havoc would want to bring one of his current teammates with him. So, I think that getting the full perspective, it kind of, I think I was always feeling pretty confident that Havoc would make the best decision for himself. I think both choices come with extreme amounts of potential risk, but also potential reward when it comes to wanting to play in the CDL, but making sure you're doing it in the right time with the right vibes. So I think that his explanation was very well read. And I think just on top of that, it really kind of gives a light to the timing of this is just not right for him to get into that mix, especially if of the things that he's saying is true, where it's like they're not watching VOD, there's a lot of yelling and arguing going on. And if you're doing very well in challengers, why not try to continue rolling that? Put yourself in a position to at least be comfortable either later on in the year or potentially in the next year if you decide to stick with challengers for the year. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was good to kind of see his side of things. I'm just curious to see kind of how it pans out for him, right? I think he's, based on his twit longer, it seems like he's content and okay with being in challengers for the entirety of the year, which I respect. Like if he wants to play with that team and he's really enjoying the vibe and mentally it helps him a lot to be with these guys and work with these guys, I completely respect that. I think the biggest thing for a lot of people is just like, and it kind of is the question mark in my head. It's just like, I hope it doesn't come to bite him, right? I hope that he gets another opportunity. And I think the biggest thing for a lot of people, and I know like past pros and whatnot probably have this opinion, it's just like, if you turn down this offer, which it could end up hurting you, but it's like and this is what I said yesterday, it's like, what is the perfect offer, right? Like when is there going to be an opportunity or a time given where a team's making a change and they're doing well or they're not in shambles, right? The reason you see roster changes and the reason you see teams pick up players from challengers and give people opportunities is because they're not doing well. So I guess from my perspective, it's like, I don't know when, like I said, that we talked about it yesterday, like a few anomalies that happened where players are getting put into like a good system or like a middle of the pack solid team, but it's like, that's so rare. So I'm just curious to see kind of how it pans out. I guess from my perspective, it's like, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where you're just joining like a top 6 team that's actually happy and like, hey, the vibes are flowing. We're not arguing. We're not watching VOD because we're getting absolutely destroyed. So that's my perspective a little bit. I don't know kind of what you think about that, but I just feel like there's never, like, you look at the bottom teams right now, like let me just pull this up, like looking at Minnesota, LAG, New York and Paris, New York and Paris. It's like, what team are those guys are like happy and content right now and doing well? And I'm sure if I know any of these guys, I've played with them, talked to them a lot, like their camp's in shambles a little bit, right? It's not going well. When you're been playing for 5+ years and you're in the league and you're not seeing success, like it's not just all rainbows and butterflies. Everything's not happy. Everything's not going well. And like you start to see some beef in between teammates and players, and like it just goes downhill unless you have like, I think the one team on the outside of that would be like, I think Seattle, if I had to guess out of those teams available, like I think they still mentally are all there, and I think they're all good friends inside and outside of the game, to where like I don't think that camp's completely in shambles, but I don't know. It's interesting to see. I'm like I said, I'm curious to see kind of how it plays out for him. I wish him nothing but the best and hope he can kind of get into the league and make something work. both sides come with risk and reward. That's the biggest thing about it.
Mhm.
Joining into the CDL, that's the reward. You're in the CDL.
Yep.
The risk is you find yourself in a situation like Jimbo is, where the team doesn't get turned around, and all of a sudden, all of the great favor that the Challengers broadcast has brought to you, whether it be the flank watch partying, Zinni watch partying, or just the commentators at large talking highly about you, all of that just gets thrown aside. All of a sudden, it's, oh, he can't do it in the CDL. The other side of that is if you deny the whole CDL situation and your reward is you continue to play well in Challengers, the risk is, did you just shoot yourself in the foot by not taking the chance in the first place? So it's really a double-edged sword. But I still think generally the decision of a Challengers player on the best team currently in North America, could be the best team currently in Challengers, to run through the Minnesota Open, give yourself a chance to play at the Pro-Am, and then figure out would there be an opportunity to fix a team after they... What will happen, by the way, this will happen. There will be at least one, if not two, maybe even 3 or 4 pro teams that get smoked by amateur teams. That would be the catalyst for the organization that is hesitant to make moves to want to make moves. So if it is a situation with Paris where they keep the same roster and they get smoked, I can almost guarantee you that they're going to try to make moves after that Pro-Am if they lose out to an amateur team. So the opportunity maybe not to just take yourself into the league, but to bring somebody with you, that maybe leads to a better opportunity to fix one of those camps that are currently down bad. So I agree with the call. I think generally for what Havoc is putting together, as much as it is a risk to not be in the CDL when it gets offered to you, give yourself the Open, give yourself the Pro-Am, then make a decision.
Yep. I'm a firm believer of betting on yourself, right? And that's just what he's doing in this situation. He trusts himself here in the situation that he's going to get another opportunity or get a spot to play in the league and maybe be able to bring on some of his teammates. So we will see what happens, and only time will tell realistically, right? We'll see what happens at this Pro-Am and see if some of these bottom teams, again, it's going to be a bottom team, but maybe he'll be able to bring in some of his teammates and kind of turn the roster around and be able to get them in a playoff run. But I'm excited to see what happens at the Pro-Am and through Major 2 and see if some of these teams kind of take a risk on some of these guys coming up from Challengers, or if they try and go to the trade route and we actually see a trade go down in the CDL, which would be lit.
That would be super lit.
First one ever. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, for real.
Okay.
All I got on that.
Yeah, me too. I think that I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad we can kind of share our insight on it. But that'll transition us into the matches for today, guys. We're going to talk about some of these matchups, and I think that it starts off with an absolute banger, honestly. You get to see Seattle Surge go up against Los Angeles Guerrillas. I feel like we haven't seen LAG play in a long time because we haven't.
Dude, for real.
It feels like I haven't seen these guys play in the league in forever, honestly. But we get to see these guys go against it, right? This is a huge match for both of these teams, and we're going to get to see a winner. You get to see if the Seattle team can kind of handle business. We've been talking about, people have been saying, oh, they can compete against, Optic and FaZe, but what can they do against the middle of the pack teams? And LAG, this is kind of like a defining moment for them. Like, this is like a make or break, in my opinion. Like, this is a team they need to handle business versus. Seattle has not looked good, and outside of the win versus FaZe, I don't know exactly what their record count is. I want to say they're 1-7, I think. Outside of that FaZe win. No, Seattle.
Seattle? Oh yeah, no, they're in a big losing slid for sure. Yeah, it's in total they're 4-6 right now, so it would be 3-6. Over the last 7 games, it's been just the one win from Atlanta.
Yeah, so they've been on a little down slope, but then, like I said, this kind of is like the defining moment for me with LAG. Like, we really get to see, like, can this team handle a bottom of the pack or middle of the pack, I guess, team, wherever you place Seattle as far as power rankings go. So I don't know. It's going to be a banger. I feel like, I don't know, like, anyone could come out and play well, right? Like, it's literally so, like, I'm sitting here thinking in my head, like, of these rosters, right? And it's like, are we going to get the Sib who's unkillable this series and he just drops a 1.4 and, like, does the crazy stuff that he does? Or is he going to be average today, and then we see Huke or Asum or one of these guys step up and go crazy? It's such a weird series for me, man.
So here's my take. LAG wins when Huke and Asim do unhuman things. That's when they win. And if they can pull that off versus Seattle, I think they can contest. Thing about it is, I don't think that they're going to be able to do the same things that LAG have done versus like a Paris or when they beat London, for instance. I don't think that they're going to be able to put those same things together in the maps that we're probably going to get versus Seattle. This Surge team I know is down off of like their recency when it comes to win losses, but I largely think that after the win from Atlanta and the tight series they played versus Optic, that this team is fixing what went wrong at the major. And they're doing it in a very dramatically successful rate too. So I'm still very high in the Seattle team. I think that they're still a top 6 team, even though they're on this little bit of a losing skid. I think the ceiling is still very, very high. And the floor is not super, super low. Like, I think that they're getting in above the ground level when it comes to what they established themselves as at the beginning of the year and what they showed us in the last 2 matches in particular. So I'm still very high in the Seattle team. I think it was just one of those moments where maybe you get a little bit comfortable, a little bit too complacent. You're kind of riding the same map styles that got you all the favor at the beginning of the year. And teams are learning not only how to play the map, but what you're doing to counter you. So I think that there's a little bit of restrictiveness into Seattle being able to do everything that they were doing at the beginning of the year. But I think that this team is still very, very solid, and I'm very high on them still.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it perfect. I'm kind of curious to see how this kind of unfolds too. Like, this series reminds me of like the battle of like the newcomer young guns versus like the older vet squad. Both teams are really good. But I'm kind of with you, man. I think Seattle, I don't know, on paper and like what they've shown us, yeah, their series count hasn't been too good over their last few games, but I think the Seattle team, like, they're going to put it together. I think they're more of like a team, and I think their map pool is a little bit more expanded. I like how they kind of play loose on the map. LAG, to me, for them to be successful, I feel like they just need to, like, I don't know, almost just become one with Vanguard. Like, these guys need to, like, drop this, like, slower pace strategy, get in the mix, and have, like, I don't know. This game, to me, like, from the outside looking in, it seems like these teams that have, like, just less, like, I mean, you heard Bance say it yesterday, like, right? This team's like, they're like a fundamental team that like views Call of Duty like I would back in the day. And watching this game, I feel like you don't throw strategy out the window, but to an extent you do. Like, you play loose, you play like off the leash, like you just make plays, and because like there's so many kills that go down on hardpoint, and so many, there's like a million different things that you could go over and like overanalyze. But at the end of the day, like, you can go and get a 2-piece, or you could go in and die, and like it may not have that much of effect on the game as you really think. And I just feel like some of these teams, like with these slower rosters, like I don't know, it seems like they overanalyze the game, in my opinion. Like they don't let loose. They don't kind of just let, like, I don't know. It just reminds me of like watching like Capsule and Nero. Like, their POVs are insane, right? Like, they just go out there, take every guts fight, slide cancel, chow over and over. And then like you watch some of these other guys, and it's like a slower, more methodical game. And I just feel like it's not working so far this year, in my opinion.
I think for LAG, this entire series is pretty much hinged upon what that AAR setup is going to feel like on Respawn. I think because of the reasons that you're talking about right now. Like, we've obviously, you mentioned the whole SIB situation with running possibly a AAR hardpoint with accuracy. But the thing about it is, you get SIB who wants to play aggressive, even with an automaton in hand, and he's obviously got the ability to pick up P40 and do well with it. So I think as much as this LAG series is going to be spotlighted by the performance from Asim and Hook, I'm actually most anticipating what we're going to get out of the ARs from LAG. I think those are going to be the win-loss conditions, because we've seen pretty much consistent results from Asim and Hook pretty much throughout the entirety of the year when it comes to Respawn in particular. I feel like when LAG doesn't win, it's because you're not getting the same level of participation out of the ARs. Like, you can't, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I'm talking in circles a little bit, but you cannot rely on Asim and Hook to take over a game. Like, their wins have been miracle takeover moments and how they've found wins, especially in their hard points. So you can't rely on that versus Seattle, was my first point. The second would mean that, kind of piggybacking off of it, your ARs have to come to play today. You cannot allow accuracy and SIB to take over this series just by winning the AR fights. So I think from a pacing and tempo standpoint, LAG is going to have to really showcase itself, like you mentioned, from getting a little bit aggressive, but making sure those ARs are in a comfortable position to not just get overwhelmed by how fast Seattle can play.
Yeah, and just to hint off that, I saw someone in the chat just put the map set actually for the series. You're going to see a Tuscan, Berlin, Gav, and then a Tuscan to close it out. So this series is kind of going the way I thought it would. Honestly, I knew we wouldn't see a Bokic hardpoint at all. But these maps are, I don't know, dude. I feel like I knew this was kind of going to happen in a way, just because I don't think LAG was going to play Seattle and Bokic at all. They're going to get rid of that map instantly. And then on the side of LAG, or no, that was LAG, sorry. And then on the side of Seattle, it looks like what did they get rid of? Tuscan, but no, they got rid of, what map did they get rid of? I'm crazy.
They must have gotten rid of Berlin hardpoint because they're pretty bad at that.
Yeah, Berlin, okay. So then, yeah, you'll see a Tuscan map one. Yeah, and a Gav hardpoint. I don't know. this series is
It's a
going to
good
be,
map type.
yeah, no, it is. I think this is very like form fitting for both of these rosters. I think that you want to see on the LAG side, like off of the mixier maps, you want to see them on those double AR maps. So I like the double Gav to kind of have it 3-4 later in the series. But I don't know, man. I guess that'll kind of lead me right into predictions. Unless you got any final thoughts, I don't have anything really on Seattle or LAG, but I know where my gut is going. I think overall for me personally, I think Seattle's look like the better team. I feel like I haven't seen LAG play in so long. I don't know why, and I think Seattle's due. They're gonna finally handle business. They played a tight Optic roster the other day. I think Sib's gonna continue the dominance, and I don't know. I just think they're the better team right now, honestly. I'm going to go Seattle Surge here. I think I'm going to go... Oh, man, this is tough. I'm going to go Seattle Surge. I'm going to give it 3-1. I think they're going to handle business, but I'm giving LAG a map. I just think, like I said, the side of Sib and Pred, I think these guys are going to have another series. Their confidence seems to be there. They've been playing really well, and they've had some dominant maps. That Bokach Hard... I just think, when I think Seattle, I'm thinking that Bokach Hardpoint versus Optic now. And it just is playing through my head, and I got them winning this series pretty convincingly.
Yeah. For what it's worth, by the way, in case people have been tuning in late and you don't know how the predictions are working, perfect prediction with map count is worth 3 points. The correct winner is worth 1. Your boy Shift is cleaning up. I'm not gonna lie though. After the 3-1 pick from Atlanta yesterday, I was like, oh god, this is the day Slack makes his comeback. I could feel it. So off of the map selections, getting back into this series overall, the good news for LAG is that they get what they want in search. They get their Berlin to come through as map number 2, which is great news for them. And both teams technically get the control that they want because they both prefer to play Gavudu, it looks like, over Tuscan. The difficulty in this series is the hard points, I think, for LAG because of the reasons that we had already mentioned. I'm actually going to go with you here in this one. I'm going to go 3-1 Seattle. I've got them winning the 1, 3, and 4, and I've got LAG taking the Berlin search.
I like it. I think it's a fair vote in my opinion. I think, like I said, I don't know. I don't know what to expect from this LAG team. I'm curious to see kind of how they perform today, and hopefully they can change our minds and turn our heads. But that'll transition us into the second match of the day. Minnesota Rokkr going up against the LA Thieves, and
it's a tough one, bro.
Allen. I don't know
what's on your mind.
This is for this series to be competitive. Minnesota needs to change the roles back, man. Like I hope they did that in practice. I genuinely do, because I feel like when we've talked about these guys recently, like there's just something, I don't know if it's internally, I don't know. Like I know it's a pacing issue, but I just don't know what kind of like the thought process is behind them, because like I've seen them tweet out, and some of them saying like we don't look this bad in practice, like we've looked good, like we've been doing our thing. And I've been on that side of things. Like for instance, on my Florida team in Cold War last year, like we were really good in practice. We would not lose scrims, and we would dominate majority of the time when we play. And that's the only thing you have to base off when you do vetoes, when you do things like that. Like if you're winning certain maps all the time, then you go into the match and you play them, and like you literally scrim every day 5-6 hours, and then you take it to the series and like you're losing the map. It's like, what do we have to do? And you go back and watch the VOD, and then you talk about the fundamental errors. So I can only imagine how frustrating that is on the side of Minnesota, because if they're doing pretty good in practice based on their tweets and whatnot, but they can't transition it into matches, it's like, at what point do you like, I don't know. I guess I just don't know where you go with that, right? So I just
it's true.
I don't know what to think of them. Then I don't know, man. I don't know what Minnesota we're gonna get today, to be honest. That's kind of my final thoughts on them.
That's fair. So you got to remember back to when these two teams played each other in the major, it was a pretty uncompetitive series. It was convincing map wins for one team or the other. LA Thieves took it 3-1 back then, with wins on Berlin and Gavudu hardpoints and a win on Gavudu control. Minnesota was able to take the Berlin search. The thing about this is this LA Thieves team, obviously we have a lot of questions about their hardpoint over the course of the last couple of matches, because it was not nearly as convincing as it had been through the stage 1 qualifiers, and even in their showcase that they put together during the first major. And I think a lot of that is because they are trying to put a lot of reps on their search and destroy, which looked much better versus Optic in the first place. My biggest thing, though, I think for this matchup is LA Thieves have to dominate the respawns here. Not only because Minnesota is a very solid search team, it's their best mode, obviously, but they're very much so struggling to get any sort of confidence, it looks like, with this new role change in respawn in particular. So this has got to be one of those moments where we see LA Thieves showcase their dominance that they had during the Major 1 qualifiers on Hardpoint, and also show their improvements on Surge. I think that they will be able to do both of those things. I think that Minnesota, if they stick to the same roles, which I think they're probably going to, just kind of reading the lines off of Saint's tweet saying, hey, that our last series was not us during practice. I think that they're going to kind of treat that as almost kind of a fluke round that they were able to put together when they were playing up against Boston. But the thing about it was, even losing a Bocage Surge to that Boston Breach team is not inspiring, especially in the form that they lost it. So this is kind of a do or die series, I think, in a way for Minnesota. We talked about the potential of, if they do not show improvement with this role swap, how long do you keep running through that before you have to start considering potential roster swaps? We've kind of entertained the idea of like, who would it be that potentially make this Minnesota team better? So it's a tough series for Minnesota. I don't feel great about them. I don't know. I'll kick us off here with prediction wise. I think the thing about this is, as much as I think LA Thieves are going to run through this series, they need to get it done in 4. I think based on what potential maps we're going to get, if we get to a map 5, Minnesota actually can win this series just off the search and destroys alone, plus 1 respawn. So I think for LA Thieves, you have to get this done at latest by 4, because I don't feel great about their chances of closing out a map 5 versus this Minnesota team.
Okay, I like it. You're going to go ahead and swing it into predictions? Do you want to hear my thoughts?
I got 3-1 Thieves for this one.
I like it. I think, for me, here's my little hot take. I think the LA Thieves are like that old like Optic Chicago Huntsman team where they're on the cusp of, they basically, I'll call them they beat up on the noobs. They beat up on all the teams that are kind of like outside of the top 4. So like the 5 through 12 teams, I think they handle business every single day of the week. I think they're going to continue to struggle versus the top teams, and I think we've kind of seen that. I think they're playing against a broken Minnesota Rokkr team that unfortunately needs to have a change or a new scenery for them. I think LA Thieves honestly handle business today. I don't think they struggle on hardpoint versus them. We've seen Minnesota, their record in game 1s are not good. And overall, LA Thieves' record in hardpoint is like 20-6, I want to say. So I'm not worried about these guys winning a map 1. I think they'll continue the momentum through the series. I got LA Thieves honestly handling business, winning this series 3-0. I think they're really just the better team. I don't think this is going to be too competitive. I think we're going to continue to see the struggles and the woes from Minnesota Rokkr. And we're probably going to see another Gavutu hardpoint again. I would assume, just because I don't think LA Thieves play Bocage at all, so I think they're going to get rid of that one. I think we'll see a Gavutu and let Attach and Priest to kind of run the ARs, and I don't know, man. I'm worried about him, man. I really am. It sucks to see. It does, and I hope they can turn things around and make this series very competitive. But I got LA Thieves kind of handling business here. 3-0.
Yeah. I think the vetoes are going to be very crucial on both sides, because you're right. LA Thieves does not particularly like to play Bocage, but neither does Minnesota. So you kind of have to decide, like, do we want to try to, obviously, I think you still want to try to prove yourself on Gavutu, but do we let Minnesota potentially get themselves onto a Berlin or a Tuscan, which, even though they have not won yet, they did look pretty good on it, at least the last couple of times that we've seen them outside of getting kind of spanked down by Toronto. So I don't know. It's a difficult series to pin up for Minnesota. I think you have to get this done by winning the 2-3-5 though, if you're the Rokkr.
I wonder too if we see like we used to call it like a big dick in vetoes. Like I wonder if we see Minnesota like knowing that LA Thieves is probably just gonna veto that Bocage, you know what I mean? And they can kind of swing the vetoes in a way. Like they don't have to veto it, knowing that LA Thieves would, and they could veto, like you said, kind of one of LA Thieves' better maps. So if they want to get the Tuscan Berlin maps, or if they want to play Gavutu, they can kind of control the vetoes right now. So I'm curious to see what hard points they choose to go with, just because they kind of know that LA Thieves have that auto veto in their back pocket, and if they're allowed, if they're okay with playing a team that doesn't play the map much, then I would be curious to see how it kind of plays out. So Minnesota really does control the hard point vetoes, that's for sure. But like I said, I think that's kind of my final thoughts too on this. I think LA Thieves are going to handle business, and we'll see what Minnesota we get if we see the one that's been performing in practice. But that'll transition us into the last series of the day. We got Atlanta FaZe going up against Toronto Ultra, and I don't know what to think of this series. I say that Toronto doesn't have anything to worry about, but like I haven't seen them like be this Toronto Ultra from like last year. They're a top team, don't get me wrong, and they sit up there in the standings and like in the power rankings and whatnot, but I just don't know. They kind of remind me of like a little less than like LA Thieves, where they'll handle business versus like the bottom teams, but versus the
Sure.
top teams, I think they're going to continue to struggle just a little bit. But I don't know, man. It's going to be very competitive, I think. FaZe just looked so good yesterday, and they got the job done versus London, and London has looked better than Toronto so far this year.
Agreed. Yep. If you want to look at it this way, just kind of looking over Toronto's head-to-head records, they obviously played FaZe. It was like the end of their run for Major One. They got smoked 0-3, right? But also when they played Optic, they also kind of got beat up in the search and the control, lost that series 0-3. And then when they played London, obviously most recently, you remember that one on LAN, that was a map 4. It was a very close series though from start to finish. Everything was within like 20 points on hardpoint. I think that was also like a round 10, round 11 search. So I mean, it hasn't been good. You're right. They've beat up every team below them, but have struggled versus the teams above them. So how do you fare against playing Atlanta again? I think that there's nothing to worry about when it comes to Toronto improving and keeping this roster to find significant success, but I don't think it's going to be an overnight turnaround against this Atlanta team. So I'm feeling much better about Atlanta, confidently so, after their win versus London, and I don't think they're going to have a problem with Toronto, even though I think the series could be competitive. I don't really see a pathway for Toronto to win this series in their current form. It's my biggest problem.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree. And it's like, I don't know, we even see kind of a little bit the hard point woes kind of continue for this Toronto team yesterday, going up against Boston. You see that absolutely insane choke game 1 from them, and then they go on the Gavutu and they get absolutely body slammed. So it's like, I'm curious to see kind of how the vetoes play out too for these guys. Like, if you're a Toronto team, what do you square up with on FaZe like here? Like, do you play them on the Gavutu that you get bodied by, right? Or do you square up on the Bokic hardpoint?
Yeah, you can't play him on Bocage. You can't.
Exactly. But then it's like yesterday, you could argue they looked worse on, or not argue, they definitely looked worse on Gavutu than they did Bokic yesterday. Like, so I wonder on the back of their head, like, do they sit there and think, well, we should have closed out this map versus a pretty good Bokic team? Do we just go ahead and square up versus FaZe, or do we cut the losses and we try and obviously rotate better on Gavutu and not get 100-point clubbed?
Here's the thing. As much as the result yesterday makes you think you can win a Bocage, I think what's going to stick in your mind more is the fact that you got body slammed by Atlanta on land on Bocage. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I think Toronto's going to remember. So I think you kind of have to allow Gavutu to go through, which is not a necessary guarantee that Atlanta will pick that in the first place. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see them try to square up with them on Tuscan in the first place. Like, I think it just is going to be interesting, I think, to see what Atlanta wants to pick, because they typically hard veto out Berlin, and their loss versus Seattle, I think they still put that one back in the lab. They probably ban out Berlin. So I don't know. I think if you're Toronto, you have to be okay playing Tuscan and Gavutu, which obviously are not great venues for you overall. But I think you kind of have to go off of what you learned versus Minnesota playing both of those maps. And I think you have to take it there. I think it's a very difficult pretense to go and play Atlanta on Bocage. No one plays Atlanta on Bocage anymore, for good reason too.
Yeah, no, I think you have to. Honestly, I agree. I think it's just something that, like, you have to cut your woes and be like, all right, this is the map we're gonna square up on.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It could be a competitive series, but I think the way FaZe kind of looked yesterday and coming off of that rough loss from Toronto against Boston Breach, I'm gonna kind of swing things right into predictions for me. I'm not sure if you kind of have any other thoughts on those guys, but I think I got Atlanta FaZe. He's kind of handling business here. I will give Toronto Ultra a map, but I'm just worried about their hardpoint still. They're playing a really good hardpoint team who looked fluent and sound yesterday, and these guys are really good across all the modes. I'm going to go 3-1 FaZe here. I think they're going to handle business and show why they're a top 2 team in the game.
Yep, I'm going a little bit more of the handle business route. I think that the maps are going to be relatively close, but I've got Atlanta handling this one 3-0. I think what we're seeing off the search and destroy from Toronto, their wins are always like round 10, round 11 wins, and I don't love how the maps very well may fare when it comes down to not just the hard point, but especially the search. And then control-wise, yeah, they've played all right, but I think Atlanta's coming with something different in control. Even their loss versus London, I thought the things that they were trying on Gavutu were inspiring. It's just London's defensive setup on Gavutu control right now is literally the nearest thing to perfection that we've seen. So I think they learned something from that immediately overnight. And if they do play Gavutu, I think they're going to be more improved against it versus Toronto. And obviously, you don't really want to play Atlanta on Tuscan control in the first place. So obviously, coin flip will kind of dictate what happens with that control. But I think Atlanta take either of those two controls. I think they take either of the two hard points that we're expecting, whether it be Gavutu or Tuscan first. And the Search is kind of up in the air. There's not really a great venue, I think, for Toronto to play Atlanta in Search. So I got this 3-0.
I like it. And that kind of wraps up the matches for the day. I think we'll go ahead and take a few chat questions too. If you guys want to transition to that, chat, if you guys got any questions for us, we can kind of go in and answer some of those to wrap up the show. Alan, I got to take a bathroom break real quick. I have to pee, so I'll BRB. Chat, get the questions flowing in, and we'll answer some questions before we wrap up the show.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's interesting, the dynamic right now, I think, just overall with where we're at in the CDL. I think for everyone who's out there who's going to be watching on to today, or if you're watching this on YouTube and you're kind of retuning back into the CDL, this is a very critical moment for a lot of teams in the CDL right now, just because the teams that started off hot are starting to realize that teams are growing and learning, and the teams that kind of started off slow are either figuring out the title or they're in a position where changes need to happen. So this is a very critical time, I think, just for every team right now in the CDL. But I think this is always, for me, the most fun time of the year, watching the CDL, because you start to see like the little moments is what determine the kind of the difference in the outcomes at the moment. Like you especially look at like the Bacage hard point yesterday between Toronto and Boston. Like Boston's perfection through P1, P2 got them to get to like a 60-second plus flip. So those moments are really cool. So I encourage you guys out there, while you're watching the CDL this weekend, or if you come back and watch Challengers on Tuesday and Wednesday, which you should definitely do because playoffs are on Tuesday and Wednesday, look for those little moments. I think that's where we're really going to see the fun of Vanguard come through. I think Jerry, I think you're back. Did I see
I am
you
back.
swap in?
I'm back. My bad. I was feeling under the weather, so we chugged a bunch of water to get the body flowing.
I feel that.
And I had to
feel that.
go to the bathroom. Okay, do we got any questions rolling in, or
Yeah, we got
what's
a couple
the
in
word
here.
here?
Just kind of giving a little CDL spiel.
Okay.
Could Rokkr replace someone like Major Maniac for Havoc? We've talked a lot about, Rokkr moves potentially. I don't know if that's the answer. Again, I'm still pretty high on Major Maniac. I think his value is underappreciated because his numbers are not like dashy numbers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way he plays the game is pretty good for a main AR. So I'm not big on Rokkr getting rid of Major Maniac, even though he's kind of the easy scapegoat.
Yeah, I think for me, we've kind of spoke about it a little bit. It's like, what route do these guys go? I think for me, they need to figure out their roles, right? Like they got to figure out what we want to do. Do we want to put attach on an AR? Is that something we are serious about? Is that a role he really wants to run and he's going to fully transition into? And if that is the case, then he's going to run that main AR role for this team, then yeah, you could potentially entertain Havoc. Yeah. But if he is not going to do that and he's going to go back to running a submachine gun, it's like, then are we putting Priesta back on a flex? Are we keeping Standy? Are we getting rid of it? Like
they need a spark.
What is the idea and like the goal here? So, because like, I feel like personally, if they're going to keep attach on a sub, I think you kind of entertain almost trades in a way, even though I think he has been one of their best players. But unless you're going to get rid of Standy or, Priesta, because I don't know, they got to figure it out. If they have 3 guys who want to run submachine guns, then that's fine. But now we have to make a roster change for one of them. That's just a fact. It's something that they'll have to do. And if Priesta wants to run that sub, then maybe they entertain a change for him. So I don't know. We'll see kind of what they end up doing. But like I said, for me, I think they have to figure out the roles. They got to figure out what these guys actually want to use.
I think they need a spark. Like, I think they need what Standy brought to the mix last year, just like that mentality change, that kind of, X factor to the formula that was already built. I think they just need a little bit of a jump start here to kind of really kind of see the light in a way. Like, I feel like they're just not seeing Vanguard right now. I think the team itself is okay, but I don't think they're really seeing what Vanguard is supposed to be. So I think they need someone to come in and like give them a little bit of a boost. And who knows, maybe it is just adding a sub to the roster and having that sub play a couple of scrims just to kind of change the tempo, change the pace, and that may be all they need. I don't know, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I agree. I like this question coming in from Cobsta. He said, who is the most exciting team to watch for each of you guys and why? I like that the question. I have one off the top of my head. I'm not sure if you have one yet, or you want me to go?
Yeah.
Go ahead, then. Go ahead.
Mine's London for sure. I just think it's not just the speed that they play, but it's how disciplined they are when things start to go wrong. Like, this team is literally just figuring out hard point holds That's all they need. If they figure that out, this team will be not just competing. I think they'll start to routinely be in tight series that they could win versus teams like Atlanta and Optic. We saw that yesterday playing up against Atlanta. Very close moments. If they just hold one setup here or there on either of the opening 2 hard points, they very well win one, if not both of those hard points. Like, that series very well could have been a 3-1 the opposite direction. So I'm most excited about London. I think their understanding of how the game needs to be played, not just by a tempo wise, but also just listening to them calm and how they're trying to move around the map as a collective squad, I think is really, really fun. So I'm mostly pumped, I think, about watching this London team.
Yeah, I like that answer a lot. And I'm going to go with a bold one, I guess, for some people. I'm not going to go with the easy answers, FaZe or Optic. I'm going to go with Boston Breach. I actually love watching these guys play. I think I like the story of like Capsule a lot. I like how he was like literally basically a nobody coming from challengers. No one knew anything about him. I like how he came in and proved everyone wrong. And not only has he done it online, he's done it on LAN. And that's been the biggest thing for me over the last few years, kind of transitioning into this like COVID era of time where it's like we're playing these online league matches. We don't really know what these guys are about or what they can do. I think he's such a flashy, entertaining player. He's very streaky. He can turn games around. We saw it yesterday when they're playing Toronto, and even Nero Poison. Like, when he's on and both those kids are frying, then I'm good friends with Methods and TJ. So seeing those guys find success and winning and whatnot is really cool to see. And I think they're a really entertaining team. They keep serious competitive and flashy play. So it's a fun time to watch. I like watching them a lot.
And they're learning at such a rapid rate, dude. Like, it would actually be really fun to like watch them play. I don't know. Let me go back and look at some of their results. I think it'd be fun to watch them play. Like, what went wrong? Oh, this is the key. Like, watching them play like a Bacage that they had versus Atlanta back at the beginning of qualifiers versus what they just did versus Toronto yesterday. Like, I think comparing those two would be really, really fun, because I think the level that they're adapting and adjusting to keep their identity, by the way, they're not losing their identity, has been really cool to see.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think it's going to be exciting to see them continue to progress and then play against some of these top teams like we've talked about. Like, just looking at some of their losses, like they've lost to New York twice, they've lost to Atlanta twice, they've lost to Optic Texas once, and then one loss to Toronto. So I'm excited to see what they can do when they go up against Thieves and London, some of these other top dog teams, and see if the progression really is shown for these guys. You got another one, or you want me to grab one?
There was a couple in here. There's actually a lot of great questions today, guys.
I've seen
Seriously,
a lot.
Thank you for it. There's a lot of great questions. Like Gersh's question: if you're LAG and Rokkr, each of you pick one, what changes are you making to try to make top 3 next major?
If you're LAG, let me read that.
Like,
if you're LAG and Rokkr, go ahead.
It's super tough because there are so many factors, and we've talked about changes for both of these two teams at pretty great length. The thing that I always kind of caution when we talk about changes is like, this is just off of evaluating other players. We don't know what the synergy, chemistry, the team sense would be between other players. So it's very difficult, I think, just to sit there and pick players and be like, yeah, pick up these guys, and then all of a sudden be figured out. I think both teams just need a spark. Like, they just need to have something be a light bulb moment for them, because I think both rosters in theory are fine. I think largely they just need to kind of get that, oh, light bulb, here we go. This is how we're supposed to be doing this. And at the moment, I think they're still kind of feeling out. It's kind of like they're blindfolded through a forest. Like, they're trying to feel their way through it, and it's just not really working out for them at the moment.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But so I guess on them, so if you were to try and make, hang on, what change would you try and make changes, or no? Are you kind of just avoiding you think they just need a spark? Like, if you were playing GM here, like, I guess, is that I think the question that he was kind of asking was if you were playing GM, basically, yeah.
I think changes are probably, I mean, it depends. Like, we'll figure out, I think, after this week, or this next week, rather, week 3 through the qualifiers. I think we'll get a pretty good idea of, like, is the team salvageable? Are we seeing moments? And again, I encourage all of you out there while we're watching Minnesota today, is not just look at the final score, the final KDs, and the wins and the losses. Look at what they're trying to do in certain moments, especially for hardpoint for Minnesota, where they've categorically struggled, is when they're trying to break a hardpoint, how are they going about it? Are they actually setting themselves up to be in a good spot to contest, neutralize, or win on a break? Or are they doing what we saw them do the last time they were out playing up against Boston on Berlin, where it's like, we're just going to try to hit her on the back, and it's like one player going one direction, one player going the other direction. Like, That's the moments we really need to pick apart. Same thing for like if they win a rotation today and they're setting themselves up for a hold, are they actually pushing to kind of put a line of scrimmage ahead of the hard point when they win a rotation, or are they sitting and reacting? I feel like the biggest thing right now for teams like Minnesota and LAG is that their proactive moves are individualistic when other teams are very much so doing it as a group of at least 3, if not potentially all 4 hitting the same thing. So those are the things that we need to look at to evaluate, not just looking at the fact that they're 5-12 in hard point and they have an average loss differential of like 23 points per map. Look at the moments in those maps to really kind of see out, are the role swaps working? Is this potentially just a team thing? Or is it just an individual who's just not being able to lock down things like 1v1 rotations when they try to hit routes? So those are the things we need to be looking out for today, not necessarily a win or a loss, in my opinion.
Okay. To answer the question from Gersh too, I think for both of these
I didn't
teams,
answer it. I'm sorry.
no, you're good. I get where you're going with it. I get it. But I'll play the mean side of things. I think both of these teams need a change. But it goes back to what I state all the time. As an organization, what are you comfortable with being, and like what is your goal? Like what's your end goal? Are you here to win championships, or are you here to be a contending team that's like a top 5, top 6 team? Realistically, for either of these teams to try and make a championship run or be a top contender, I think they do need to swap. Like I stated before, I think Minnesota's roles right now don't make sense. If they were to do things, I think they need to first determine what guns everyone wants to run, and then make a change based on that. And then on the side of LAG, I think they got to switch something up. I've kind of talked about it a little bit. To me, they have 2 main AR players. I think it's a similar situation to kind of New York. I think you choose between Slasher and Gunless. Let one of them run a main AR and see what you can kind of get in a trade potential. Because I think both of those players are very, very good. I think in this game, though, they shouldn't be on the same team, in my opinion, just because of like I said, the formula we're kind of seeing from some of these teams. I know Pierce is a really good flex, but I think I like him personally more with a main AR. I think he fits that role really well. I think the guy's very dominant. He plays his ones very well. He kind of reminds me of like a Dashy in a way, like his gun skill and the way he's just always ready for the next fight. He's always ready for a gunfight. You never catch this guy's like lacking or anything like that. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of both of them. I just think if they tried getting like a true, I don't want to say a true flex, because I think Pierce is a flex and is very good in that role. I just want to see him run the main AR. They pick up a more aggressive flex player, then kind of go from there and see kind of the success they can get. Yeah, I think
start in, Slasher out.
I think it could. I mean, anything could work. I think the plus you have on the LAG side of things is you have 4 really good like I was saying it yesterday, like some of these organizations have 4 really good players that you can actually go out there and make a trade happen. Like do it before their stock is bad. And that's what I want to see. I hope after these next few weeks of matches, and maybe it's after the major, if teams are on the phone talking, there's some top dog players out there that are on similar salaries to some of these other guys that need to switch up their roster. Like Minnesota, LAG, Seattle, New York, these guys could all be talking, make something happen. Maybe throw even LA Thieves into the mix if these guys are looking to be a championship roster. We've seen what it did for LA Thieves in Black Ops 4. They get Priesta in, and like these guys become a different team. So I'm curious to see kind of if some of these teams will go that route and kind of just try and trade and make something happen. I mean, you get to the point where you're kind of just stuck and it can't get worse. So I hope these guys honestly look into some trades for sure.
Seymour asked a good question. A lot of the questions, you guys are asking unbelievably good questions. I feel like we've touched on a lot of them because most of them are relating to things like roster pickups, challengers players, things like that. But Seymour asked a good question that is, do you guys think that orgs should invest into better scouting during the off season? I think yes. First and foremost, like we went from the beginning of Cold War, every team just about ran an opening Cold War event. Now, granted, a lot of it was circled around their team and their content creators, but I would love to see the pro downs come back again. Like undeniably how that would be super valuable, where you get the ability for these rosters to continue to play together, but you get the ability also to read challengers players early on against other pros. I would love to see things like the pro down come back, and for a team to be able to sponsor and support that when they're looking for moves. I would love to see that.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think too, the term off season throws me off. It reminds me of the time period where there's no Call of Duty to be played. So I think if that was your question, or if I'm completely off, you can't really do scouting in the off season, obviously, because there's no Call of Duty to be played. But before
sure, right,
season, I guess if that's what he was talking about then, and before the preseason, I completely agree with you. I think it would be huge to kind of see, especially, we've talked about this a little bit. It just, every time it leads me to think, Paris, why in the world do you make a roster when you're picking from the scraps, basically, of the players?
Yep.
Pick one guy to build around. Okay, if Temp's your guy from Cold War, right? Pick Temp, then watch. Like, I know it will suck for a little bit. You won't be playing, but don't tie yourself to anyone. Literally pick the guy you want to build around. Let him play with 3 other players, 3 guys from Challengers, and see what can happen, see what can do. And then say one of the guys he likes playing with, okay, then just build a roster like that. So I would love to see kind of teams experiment almost in a way. Kind of reminds us of like that Toronto Ultra going into Modern Warfare where they had that 10-man roster. They work in a lot of the different guys and see kind of what roster they can build, how players are playing individually and whatnot. But I don't know. I think they definitely, some of the bottom teams could definitely use, especially if they're not going to be wanting to like pay a lot to the players. They're going to be stuck with some of the young new kids coming into the scene. So I don't think it would be a bad idea at all to do a good scouting session. And like you said, some of the pro-ams, I'm not sure if we'll ever see. I know there's a lot of stuff on the business side of things where you can't get these teams to play basically together before the
relations side of things. Yeah,
I know that's a thing, and that's pretty public knowledge. Like the teams literally can't compete as a 4 before the CDL in any tournament. So that I know will cause some issues, but I would love to see something along the lines of watching these players play with each other before the actual game comes out.
Yeah. I'll dip my toe into this. I'm not going to dive in because for reasons, but I would love to see that mentality for the league start to shift where we do allow teams as a full group of 4 to play. Because, and Easy Mac had said this a lot. We talked about trying to revive the pro down at the beginning of this year. And all of the pro players for the large, well, I won't say all, but a very, very large majority of the players that were in the pro scene wanted to play an event like that because scrimming is scrimming. And we kind of talked about this in ways over the course of the last couple of weeks since we've had this show, is like you in scrims may not be the same thing as you in a competitive environment. So even if it's not for a significant amount of money, just to put together some sort of a bracket to where these teams can now really compete against each other for something, then you really get to see if your practice is paying off. And I think on top of that, you also have the opportunity for AMs to get more of a spotlight, which obviously me being in Challengers, I'm always a fan of that. So I would love to see the mentality start to shift. And I hope that with the Pro-Am happening this year, that's kind of a step in that direction towards trying to encourage more integration between the Challengers ladder and then, of course, the Pro ladder.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And that even leads it down to a whole nother conversation of stuff I don't want to go into, but just giving the fans something to watch before the game comes out. But that is my kind of final thoughts on that. I don't want to go too deep into it for sure, but we can kind of pick out another question or two and wrap it up about 1:30. It's the times we've usually been hitting. I don't know if you saw any other questions or if you kind of want me to go in and find one.
Melissa's got a good one. We've touched on this before too. Will we see Optic's dominance continue in control with the update, or will they come down to earth a little bit? I think it's kind of both. I think that they're still going to do very well, but I don't think they're going to do as well because there's going to be other teams that also favor the tick progression change. I think a team like Atlanta is going to only get better, which is scary because they're already pretty good at control. I think a team like London will only continue to get better. And I think teams like Boston will also favor that change into tick progression instead of just playing essentially an elongated TDM. I don't think it's going to really affect Optic too much. I think they'll still be very good, but I do think they will be contested more than they currently are.
Okay, I like it. And this is a hot take. I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, ever since you and I started talking about the tick progression and if it will kind of change control in a way, make it more entertaining. For me, like watching the mode, it's pretty boring. But I was sitting here thinking a lot about it, and I think I'm going to say that it's not going to change hardly anything. I think that the maps, the way they are made and the place that the points are put in, it's going to almost play out the exact same way. The only thing I will say is that you may see teams like switch up their breakoffs to get early progression onto the off point that's harder to capture. and just maybe try and throw in like those swings where it's like a 1-3 split, something like that, to try and get early ticks on a point. Just because if the round is chalked, then maybe they already have a tick on B. Like let's say for Tuscan, for instance, maybe they try and do a 1-3, send someone A or mid or whatever it is, and they go B late just to try and get tick progression to kind of separate them later on. But I think that the biggest thing for me is the maps are set up for failure in a way. And it's like a lot of the times we see a tick or two come through on the point and they just can't close it out. And I feel like that happens majority of the time. And if it's not a tick or two, they get all the kills and they end up just winning the offense. So I don't know. I think it'll change a little bit on like this teams that are not so slay heavy. But overall, I think that the top control teams will stay towards the top just because I think they do have a good grasp of the game mode already.
I will say, I think Alex brings up a good point. Like stacking will happen more just to get ticks as well, which is true. The thing right now that you largely see in some of the teams that are finding success offensively right now in control is their lack of full commitment to an objective. Like you think of London and how they play around A on Gavudu, for instance. Like one player gets on and then you've got 3 players waiting for the defense to challenge. It's not like an all-in style of approaching the control zones. I think you're going to start to see teams play a little bit more risk heavy on the attacking side just to be able to put more pressure on the defense to stop those ticks. Because it's not, in my opinion, it's not just an offensive thing where attacking wise you need to get more ticks, but also defensively now you have to start contesting those neutral A zones more often. You know, like you think about Tuscan, there are a lot of teams that will just kind of throw nades and pre-fire with double ARs topside A lane, and then they'll just kind of give it up if they don't get good kills. You won't see that anymore, I don't think. I think you're going to start to see defenses also play a little bit more aggressive to deny those ticks that are typically given for free on those A zones. So I think the mentality shift will be kind of on both sides. It'll be interesting because you very well may be right. Like I very well could be completely wrong in thinking about this just a little bit too much to the T, where teams are still going to be just punished too heavily on the offensive side, and the defense will still have such a huge advantage just even with the ticks coming through. But I do think you're going to start seeing defenses playing a little bit more aggressively and committing more to stopping those kind of free plays at A right now.
Yeah, I think it'll play one of two ways, like you said. Kind of, you'll either see that side, or I think you may just see it play similar to how it is. Like I'm just sitting here thinking on Tuscan in my head, and it's like A point is so free for offense, right? Like you literally beat them mid, you beat them A point. It's like I don't think like too much changes there, but who knows? Overall I want the tick progression thing to come in because I think it will make control a little bit more enjoyable to watch and kind of stop me from just sitting there with a snooze fest. So
kill confirmed is better than control. That's blasted. All right.
I think control to just be like a good mode, it just comes down to, we've talked about it all the time, Call of Duty just needs good maps. Like maps and spawns are everything. And right now the maps that we have for control, number one, we only have 2 maps, so it seems like you see the same map every single series, so it's pretty boring and you kind of learned everything about the map. And number 2, it's just not set up very well. So like a lot of the times the defense is just very favored based on the spawns. You don't really spawn out too far, and offense doesn't really ever have a chance. So hopefully we'll see kind of some of the spawns get tweaked and adjusted over time and give people a better chance on offense on some of these maps, so you can kind of make it more competitive.
Yep, it'll be interesting. I'm pumped to see it because we are seeing the teams that are good at control are not just getting complacent with, oh, it's control, we'll just play for hopefully round 5 defense. Like they are trying new things offensively. So as much as I think the general community does not enjoy control, I actually personally love it. I nerd out on it like crazy. I love seeing the little moments make huge impacts. So I would love to see a third map. And obviously when it comes to comparing control in previous years to what we have this year, these maps are lackluster compared to others, but I still enjoy watching the mode personally. It's just, that's just me.
I like it. And I'll take this last question because we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it looks like we're getting some more people in here, so they may have not heard our take on the situation. But someone asked, Goon Blake asked, do you think that NYSL still make that 2-man change even after a hardpoint win?
Good question.
I want to touch on this a little bit. We talked about this at the beginning of the show when we were talking about New York winning their first series. I think for me, it's just one of those things where it's going to come down to timing, right? Like we're going to let this team progress, and I know they'll keep that roster right now the exact same, probably going into the major, I would assume, just because they don't have that many matches left. But for me, I'm not sold on the New York team yet. I think Pollux is a great addition. I like the add of him, and he's undefeated in the league so far between London and New York now. But
love that stat.
It's just like I love it too. I keep saying it. But I just want to see what they're actually like capable of. Now we've seen this Paris team. They're 1-10. They're the worst hardpoint team, I think, statistically in the entire game now, maybe behind New York, or no, they're right ahead of New York, I should say. So it's like 11-12 battling it out in hardpoint. And And I just don't think you're very impressed on the side of New York. I think that's kind of like a must win, right? You got the vibe reset. You got a new fourth now. They should have handled business, which they did. So that's good to see from the New York side. But I want to see what they can do against the middle of the pack teams.
I think the biggest indicator here, I think after that win, I think it gives you a little bit more of a comfortability to finish out this stage with this 4. Especially considering that Neptune did have a pretty solid series yesterday overall. But you've got Minnesota and Toronto next week. So I think depending on what happens there, you'll start to get kind of an idea. Like if they can beat Minnesota and stay competitive with Toronto, I think you feel comfortable enough to run this roster into stage 3, or maybe even just through that off period. But if you lose to Minnesota and Toronto, and you finish out the stage where you're going to be starting in the lower bracket and you just lose your opening matchup there, I think you see another roster move happen before the Pro-Am happens. Probably pretty immediately after stage 2. You probably try to get that team some reps before you get to that Pro-Am in May rather. So I think it just depends. I think for right now, with the win versus Paris and your ability to go up against a Minnesota team that's also struggling, I think you ride this roster through stage 2, and then depending on the results, you kind of figure out if there's going to be another move based on what we see in the last bits of this stage.
I agree completely. And last one for some good clickbait for the title. How long will Optic's win streak last from Val's? Hold shift. Talk to me, Alan.
They're going undefeated on the year, Jerry. Clip it. Put it at the beginning of the video. It's going to get all the clicks, all the views. No, dude, this Optic team's nasty. They really are. You got Dashy in MVP form. You've got Illy playing the best that he's played so far in the CDL. I think this Optic team is going to be a guaranteed top 3 at worst throughout the rest of the year. Very excited about this Optic team. I'm happy that I was as wrong as I was about this team at the beginning of the year when the roster was rumored. So I'm really happy with it. Really happy with this team.
When does the win streak end?
Never ends. Jerry, why would you ask such a question?
I love it. Here's a hot take, and I'm not joking either. I think they handle business versus Atlanta FaZe next weekend. I think they go on to win Major 2. They go back to back here, and they win it through the winners. I seriously don't see them losing the Major right now. I think they look like the best team in the entire game. I think we're going to see another finals of Atlanta FaZe versus Optic Texas. And I'm going Optic, baby. Let's go. Green wall. I love it.
They're never going to lose again in the history
They're
of
never
COD.
losing.
They're never going to lose again.
Optic are final. Dashy's final.
Literally final.
Let me stop with the jokes, but we appreciate all you guys. I'm going to kind of wrap up things for today. We had a great recap of day 2 yesterday from the matches, and we talked about all Call of Duty today with the matches going on. If you guys are joining us live, we really do appreciate you. Make sure to please follow the stream. We stream every single day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 2 hours before the CDL to do a little pre-show. The viewers and numbers have started to go up, so we really do appreciate you guys. If you guys are watching over on YouTube, make sure to please subscribe, drop a like, and drop in the comment down below what you guys would like to see. We're going to start trying to bring on some more players and getting some different faces on here to kind of have some different topics and controversial things between the leagues. So we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Make sure to go do me a favor and go show some love. The mods already put it in the chat, out of boy, to show some love to Hold Shifts. He's a great guy. Like I always say, he's got some great takes on Call of Duty, and he deserves all the love. So go show him some love.
Yo, Josiah, dude, I don't know if you know this.
Yeah.
But Tuesday and Wednesday, when you're sitting there like, man, I've got no more CDL to watch. It's Challengers playoffs week, baby. Tune in. YouTube.com/COD Challengers, 2:00 p.m. Eastern for Europe. I'll be on the cast 6:30 p.m. Eastern for North America, Tuesday and Wednesday. Be there. Watch it. It's going to be nuts.
And everyone spam Wold Shift in the chat with a W because he's a goat. No, but I'm gonna wrap things up. I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of First Blood. It was fun. Next week we'll have some more people on. We're gonna get another pro player appearance on there to have some good topics. So we appreciate you guys. We love you guys, and hope you guys enjoy the CDL games. We'll stick around for a little bit of a watch party for a little bit. And as always, hope you guys have a fantastic day. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys on Friday at 12 o'clock. Peace.